banks access financial services in different jurisdictions and provide cross-border payment services to customers in various currencies through correspondent banking relationships. The new scheme, which banks started to draft with Russia's finance ministry and the central bank last year, would be unlikely to work indefinitely but could help avoid a panic if one or several big banks are cut off from dollar transactions. U.S. lawmakers last year drafted a sanctions bill which proposed cutting off some of Russia's top banks from the U.S. dollar system, mentioning SBE Bank, VTB, Gazprom Bank, Russian Agriculture Bank, Pромsvязьbank, VEB, and Bank of Moscow. This did not come into force, and recently another was proposed, without mentioning any specific banks. But Russian banks still fear they could come under sanctions and so have begun to draft a contingency plan. Each important bank has a step-by-step plan on what should be done in a given situation. The first month is set out day by day, if not hour by hour, a senior financial official said. The central bank and Gazprom Bank declined to comment. The Finance Ministry, SBE Bank, VTB, Pромsvязьbank, VEB, and Russian Agriculture Bank did not reply to requests for comment. The two biggest threats to the banking sector in Russia are being cut off from the SWIFT banking messaging system and losing access to foreign currency, which they usually get from U.S. banks via correspondent accounts. In the event of being shut out of SWIFT, Russia already has its own system, which it is upgrading. And for foreign currencies there are a number of options, said the sources, who include a high-ranking state banker, a well-placed industry official, an executive with a large bank and an individual in a foreign bank. Temporary fix. The main option relies on at least one major Russian bank avoiding sanctions and being able to retain access to foreign currencies via correspondent accounts with major overseas banks. Other Russian banks would then set up or upgrade existing correspondent accounts with that bank to shift currency around. Publicly available documents show VTB has correspondent accounts with SBE Bank and VEB, while Russian Agriculture Bank has accounts with VEB, VTB, Gazprom Bank, SBE Bank, and a number of other Russian banks. VEB has such accounts with SBE Bank and Gazprom Bank. SBE Bank, VTB, VEB, Gazprom Bank, and Russian Agriculture Bank have correspondent accounts with the central bank as well. However, the bulk of these accounts are denominated in rubles, with only a handful in US dollars and euros. This would, them, allow to move the dollars between themselves by passing a correspondent account, the source at a foreign bank said, adding that in order for the backup to work, one bank in the chain would need to have a US dollar correspondent account with a US bank, as there would still be a need to make external settlements, necessitating a bridge. Correspondent accounts would complicate tracking currency transfers between the banks, making them harder for overseas authorities to spot, a former central bank official said. Such an arrangement would represent a temporary solution which might last for 3 or 4 months and buy the banks time to find an alternative, while also reassuring customers. And a spike in currency transactions by the banks which had not been sanctioned and were dealing with the foreign correspondent bank would likely arouse suspicions. Other options include the central bank providing forex currency to a clean bank, which in turn would then distribute it to peers via correspondent accounts, sources said. Alternatively, a sanctioned bank could use correspondent accounts directly with the central bank, although that would raise the risk of the central bank itself being hit with sanctions and therefore, is unlikely, the sources said.